hashtag, vacation, and we post stuff, and we post selfies, and we put the highlight reels out. And we don't want people to know that our family life might be falling apart, but we're like showing on social media and our social life that we're good. And without even knowing it, we live a very compartmentalized life. That is not integrity. Integrity would be more holistic as followers of Jesus if we're not broken up into little compartments. And this is what I want to say in front of one group is the next graphic right here. That's a holistic view of what integrity is. It's Jesus is over my professional life. Jesus is over my spiritual life. He's over my private life. He's over my family life. He is over all of it. And it is more of a holistic look. He is the core. He is the influence over every part of my life. And it leads into the relationships in my family and my social. And it drives my professional life. And so what is integrity? We might say it this way. Integrity is when your behavior matches your beliefs. Integrity is when your behavior matches your beliefs. It's what you show on the outside if it is a true reflection of what you believe on the inside. Proverbs chapter 10 says this. It says, whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Have you ever done something wrong and you knew it and your fear was, man, I hope they don't find out. I hope this just slides on. I hope no one says anything. I hope they overlook it. I hope no one saw that. You're not walking securely. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely. When you do that, you're not walking in securely. If you're hoping and praying that you don't get caught. I have never one time done something and walked in integrity, done the right thing, and thought, man, I hope they don't find out. I hope they don't find out that what I did was right. I hope that no one knew that I was honoring God. What is integrity? It is when your private life is consistent with your public life. We could say it this way, and I've heard it said this way. It's who you are when no one is looking. Who you are when no one is looking. See, integrity, let me say this. Integrity is different than reputation. Integrity is different than your reputation. Reputation is who others think you are. Integrity is who you really are. So what is the opposite of integrity? Simply put, the opposite of integrity is hypocrisy. Now, one of the biggest criticisms of Christians, and you hear this a lot, is that we're all just a bunch of hypocrites. Christians are a bunch of hypocrites. Now, remember, it's not perfection. Integrity is not perfection. Being a hypocrite is saying one thing with your mouth and doing the opposite. It's saying one thing with your mouth and doing the opposite. It comes from a Greek word called hypokrites, and it means an actor. So it comes from the word, and what it would be was the Greeks in their plays, they would wear these masks. And you see them, like, about to date myself, Motley Crue had a CD out, or a cassette tape back in the day called Theater of Pain, and they had these theater masks, and it was like this little shield. It was black mask or white mask, and it's like a Mardi Gras mask, but they would wear these masks, and you couldn't see the person behind the mask, but the mask was showing something. It was showing an image, and it was different than the person behind the mask. It means an actor. So when you read Scripture, you'll notice that Jesus was actually harder on the hypocrites than he was the prostitutes and the tax collectors or the adulterers. He was always harder on the religious hypocrites. And he really came down on them for not, he really came down on them. And it wasn't because they were sinners. He came down on them because they would say one thing and they were actually living differently. It was more about the image. It was more about who people thought they were and not who they really were. And he says in Matthew chapter 23, he says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites." Now watch what he says. "You clean the outside of the cup and the dish." In other words, you're acting one way for everyone to see, but you're hiding your true self. And he continues, he says, "But inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will also be clean." Let me just say it this way. Here's what he's saying. God can't do a work in the person that you're pretending to be. He cannot do a work in the person that you pretend to be. Integrity means an integrated life. It's not compartmentalized. What you say is actually who you are. You don't say one thing and then do something different in your private life. You guys might have heard this illustration, but there was a well-known home builder. And he worked for a massive company for years, like 40 years, and he built some of the finest homes. Year after year, he'd built the finest homes, and he made a reputation for this company he worked for. And about 35 years in, he started counting down. He had dreams. He wanted to retire. He wanted to go be a papa and raise his grandkids and take them fishing and enjoy life. And so about 35 years in, he started saying, 5 more years and I'm retiring. 36 years in, he's like, 4 more years and I'm retiring. 37 years in, he's like, 3 more years. Then it was 2 more years. And then 1 more year, and then he hit 6 months. He's like counting down. 6 months, yeah. 5 months, yeah. And about his 3-month mark, before retirement, the owner of the company came to him and said, "Hey, you build the finest homes. Would you do me a favor? And would you build me 1 more?" And the builder, he was partially hurt and partially offended. And he's like, no, I've been faithful to you for 4 decades. No. And the owner, he's like, "Look, we've been good friends for a really long time. And it would mean a lot to me if you built me 1 more home." And the builder, he was indignant. And he's like, "Fine." And what happened, he said fine, but in his heart wasn't in it. And this guy who normally built the best of the best, he started cutting corners like he had never cut before. And he used products that weren't as good. He used cheaper subcontractors who weren't as good. And on the outside, he's like, nobody will ever tell. Nobody will ever tell that I cut corners here. And at the end, the owner of the company, when he's ready to retire, comes to him and says, "Look, I want to tell you that we value you more than you can ever imagine. And as gratitude for 40 years of service, here are the keys to your new home." And the builder recognized what all of us will recognize one day, and it's this. You are building your own home. You are building your own home. Every decision you make, how you live, what you say and what you do, you are building your own home, whether you choose to be generous or selfish in your relationships. Whether you do what's right or you cut corners, you are building your own home. Whether you show honor and you build others up, or you show dishonor and you tear others down, you are building your own home. Parents, you are building your legacy. What happens in your home matters more than you could ever imagine. In years of working in the church, you know what I've discovered. The fastest way to raise rebellious kids is to claim one thing, but to live something totally different in the home. The fastest way to have rebellious kids and turn your children against God and the things of God, or to claim the things of God publicly and live far from it when no one's looking. Live far from it in the home. You are building your own home. Every day, every decision, every interaction. So the question I want to ask you is this: what is your integrity worth? What is your integrity worth to you? Because many of us, we have a price, right? We have a price. There's a point at which we may compromise. For example, you might lie on a resume to get a job. How much do you make in a year? $50,000? $80,000? $130,000? What is your integrity worth? You're selling out for a certain price. Your integrity, what if it might be worth a ream of paper that you take home from work for private use? Maybe it's worth $59 a month because you have your neighbor's Wi-Fi. Even worse, it might be worth $16 a month because you use your friend's Netflix account and they don't know. Maybe it's, I'm about to step on my own toes. Maybe it's $8 because, you take your kids out to dinner and your 13-year-old daughter looks like 10-year-old. And you get the kids menu, and God, I'm joking. I don't do that. She threw a fit. The second she turned 13, she's like, I'm 13, Dad. I'm not eating from the kids menu anymore. She lets me know. She counted down the days. So is this getting too real? Like, what is your integrity worth? We all have a price, don't we? We sell out our integrity sometimes. Who you say you are, when it matches your private life, that is integrity. One of the kids in our church, teenagers, we meet at Young Life on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And I noticed this kid constantly had a drink in their hand. Always walking around drinking. Had a Diet Mountain Dew or root beer or something. Always had a soda. And their drink machine, it's rigged to where you can, the key, it doesn't lock, so you can turn it and open the fridge and get a drink for free. And this kid was drinking a drink, and I noticed, I'm like, man, how much change does this kid have? And I asked him, I said, hey, you're paying for that, right? And all of a sudden, this sheepish look on his face, like, no, not really. Well, like, you're not paying. You're taking from another ministry, and you're drinking. And I'm like, your integrity is not worth the can of a soda, a 25-cent can of soda. When you have integrity, nothing else matters. And when you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. I'm going to say it again. When you have integrity, nothing else matters. And when you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. Psalm 139 is where I want to invite you to spend a moment with me. It's a very, very powerful prayer. And it's incredibly difficult to pray this prayer. And I'm going to invite you to pray it with me. And it says this in Psalm 139. It says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Is there any part of my life that's compartmentalized, that isn't integrated around Jesus? The reason this is a very difficult prayer is because Scripture teaches us that our heart is deceitful. It's difficult to see the truth because our heart lies to us. And I know it goes against modern day culture and society when they're like, listen to your heart. Listen, your heart will lead you astray. My heart led me down some really bad paths, got me in some trouble, got me a lot of heartache, got me in big trouble. So I'm going to ask you, is there any area of your life, if you're open to the prompting of the Holy Spirit, or are you open to the prompting of your heart? Are you being led by the Spirit, or are you being led by the heart? So 3 quick questions I want to encourage you to kind of examine whether you're being led by the Spirit or by your heart. Number 1 is this: where are you most defensive? Where are you most defensive? What I've found is where I'm most defensive, it often reveals where I'm most vulnerable. So where I'm most defensive and I don't want people to go, I'm protecting something I don't want people to see. Where are you most defensive? And that leads to the second question: what do you not want others to know? What are you hiding? What are you hiding in your private life that you don't want your family life or your social life or your professional life? Why are you not integrated and have an integrated life that's got Jesus as the core? What's something that you're keeping in your private life? And then the third question, ask yourself, where do you criticize others? Where do you criticize others? I've found that when you criticize, often what you criticize, the hardest, is often a reflection of where you are inside, where you are the weakest. What you criticize the hardest is a reflection of where you are the weakest. Can I get the band back on stage? There was back in the COVID season, back when COVID hit and churches and people couldn't meet and people were scared to meet, and we were part of a ministry that was unable to meet for a couple of weeks because the majority of staff caught COVID. And so in order to protect the rest of the staff, we're like, hey, for the next week or two, we're going to just meet online. And so at one point, we were meeting on a conference call, and we were doing Zoom. And you know how with Zoom, you can, if you've ever used Zoom, you can hit stop video, and it'll stop the video, or you can hit stop audio. And so I told him, I said, hey, my hair's a mess. I'm still wearing pajamas. I'm going to hit stop video. And I hit stop video. And so people were talking, and I got tired of being on the call because one person liked to hear themselves talk a whole lot. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm just going to get a little workout in during this board meeting or this staff meeting. And so I would just put the Zoom call on mute, and I was doing back. So I'm like, yeah, and I'm lifting, and you'd hear clink, clink, and then when they'd ask me a question, I'd unmute it, and I would answer it and act as if I wasn't breathing heavy. And then afterwards, I'd hit mute again, and I'd go back, I'd put it back on mute, and I'm going back to doing my lat pulls and my rows. I'm like, ah, and I'm breathing heavy, and you hear clink when the weights hit. And then at some point, after they asked me a question, I forgot to hit the mute button. And in the middle of my heaviest set of lat pulls, I'm like, ah, clink, ah, clink, ah, clink. All of a sudden, I noticed it was deathly silent on the call. And I realized that I was not muted. So what did I do? I immediately called out, what was that noise? Did anybody hear that? Did anybody else hear that? Are you all okay? I was invested, man. I'm going down with the ship. Like, what do you do when God shows you what you do on the outside is very different than what you claim on the inside? I ended up, I would encourage you, I actually had to apologize. I'm like, sorry, guys. I'm trying to work out. I'm trying to, because we knew, hey, we're coming out of this, where they can find you. They're like, hey, don't go in your homes. We're coming out of this either looking like Fat Thor or Fit Thor. And I'm like, I want to come out looking like Fit Thor. And so I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to work out. That was me. And my friend's like, dude, we know. Like, we heard you yell. Like, it was pretty obvious. He's like, I didn't know if you were, like, hurting yourself, if you fell. He's like, I was just listening. I'm like, what is this guy doing? But what do you do when God shows you that what you do on the outside is different than what you claim to be on the inside? And I want to encourage you to examine yourself in every area. Maybe it's exaggerating the story so that people will think better of you. Maybe it's gossip and it's made to sound like it's spiritual. I'm just telling you so you can pray for her. Oh, she needs Jesus. Let me tell you what she did. Maybe it has to do with taxes, cutting corners all the way around so that you're not really paying what you owe. Maybe it's a secret hidden sin that no one knows about. I would encourage you, acknowledge it before God. And that prayer, search my heart. Search me, O God, know my heart. Test me to see if there's anything offensive, any part of my life, any area that has been compartmentalized and not integrated with Jesus as the core, with the love and grace of Jesus. And then just confess it before God. Confess it to God and let Him cleanse you. I had to come clean to the staff and like, hey, that was me, my bad. I should have hit mute, and I kind of played it off. When you have integrity, nothing else matters. And when you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. What's difficult is that there's going to come times when you try and have the courage and do the right thing, but you know the right thing could be very, very challenging. And so what I try and tell myself is this, is with God's help, I'm going to do what's right and trust God with the results. And because I've discovered that your integrity, it's easier to keep than it is to recover. Integrity is easier to keep than it is to recover. Will you please stand with me?